Most people spend their entire week sprinting toward a finish line that just resets every Monday morning. This cycle of living for the weekend is effectively killing your future self by turning your ambition into a recovery session. It is time to dismantle the pedestal and build a life you don't need to escape from. Pause for a second, because if that line made you uncomfortable, it's not random. It's recognition. You already know this pattern. You live inside it. Monday feels like resistance. Tuesday is survival. Wednesday is negotiation. Thursday is anticipation. Friday becomes permission. And then the weekend arrives. Not as a reward, but as a release valve for a life you don't fully control. And that's the part no one says clearly. You are not living for the weekend. You are escaping to it. There's a difference. A reward reinforces a life you respect. An escape distracts you from a life you're avoiding. Right now, your weekends are not proof that you're doing well. They are evidence that something is misaligned. And you feel it, that quiet tension when Sunday evening approaches. That subtle dread creeping in while you try to enjoy the last few hours. That mental bargaining where you tell yourself, it's just another week. Just another week. Say that slowly, because what you're actually saying is, just another cycle of postponing the life I claim to want. This is where the illusion begins to crack. You were taught to believe that enduring 5 days earns you 2 days of freedom. That suffering is the price, and the weekend is the reward. That exhaustion is normal, and relief is enough. But think carefully. If your entire week is something you need to recover from, what exactly are you building? You are not building a life. You are managing fatigue, and that distinction is everything. Because ambition does not grow in recovery mode. It doesn't sharpen itself in fragments of leftover time between distraction and exhaustion. It doesn't evolve when your primary goal becomes making it to Friday. Ambition requires continuity, consistency, depth, and you have traded all three for temporary relief. Look at your own behavior without softening it. Friday night comes, and you don't slow down, you collapse into stimulation. Music louder than your thoughts. Screens brighter than your focus. Conversations that avoid anything real. Saturday becomes an extension of that escape. More noise, more consumption, more avoidance disguised as enjoyment. And by Sunday, you're not fulfilled. You're depleted, not physically, but mentally. Because deep down, you know something didn't move forward. Nothing meaningful advanced. No real progress was made toward the life you say you want. So you try to compensate. I'll start next week. I just needed this break. I deserve to relax. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't need constant breaks. You need a life that doesn't drain you to the point where escape becomes necessary. There is a difference between rest and avoidance. Rest restores you for something meaningful. Avoidance distracts you from something misaligned. And most people are not resting on weekends. They are anesthetizing themselves. This is where your identity gets exposed. Because the person who says they are ambitious, but repeatedly chooses escape over progress is not lacking time. They are lacking alignment. You don't have a time problem. You have a clarity problem. And until that is confronted, your schedule will keep lying to you. You will keep believing that you're too busy during the week and deserve rest on the weekend, while your long-term vision quietly deteriorates in the background. Not dramatically, silently. That's how ambition dies. Not through failure, through neglect, through small, repeated decisions that feel harmless in the moment but compound into stagnation over time. One weekend doesn't destroy your future. But a lifestyle built on escape does. Because every time you default to distraction instead of direction, you reinforce a version of yourself that avoids discomfort. And discomfort is where growth lives. This is the part most people resist hearing. You don't actually hate Mondays. You hate what Mondays represent. Structure, responsibility, a life that doesn't feel like yours. And instead of confronting that reality, you've been trained to endure it and compensate with 2 days of temporary freedom. But freedom that is limited to 48 hours is not freedom. It's controlled relief. And once you see it that way, something shifts. Because now the question is unavoidable. If you need to escape your life every weekend, what are you actually building during the week? Let that sit. Don't rush past it, because your answer to that question determines everything. Right now, your system is built around survival. Get through the week. Release on the weekend. Repeat. There is no expansion in that loop. Only maintenance. And maintenance doesn't create anything meaningful. It preserves what already exists. So if your current life isn't aligned, maintaining it just deepens the misalignment. That's the trap. You think you're holding things together. But you're actually holding yourself back. This is where most people look for external solutions. New habits, better routines, productivity hacks. But none of that matters if the foundation is flawed. Because you can optimize a broken system and still end up in the same place. More efficient, but still misaligned. More disciplined, but still unfulfilled. The real shift begins when you stop negotiating with the cycle. When you stop saying, "This is just how life works." Because it isn't. It's just how you've been conditioned to operate. And conditioning can be broken. But not casually. It requires confrontation. It requires you to look at your current pattern without excuses and admit something most people avoid saying out loud. This isn't working. Not in theory. In reality. Because if it were working, you wouldn't need to escape from it every week. You wouldn't feel that quiet resistance on Sunday night. You wouldn't constantly postpone the version of yourself you claim to be building. And you wouldn't be watching this right now, searching for something that feels true. So here's the shift. You stop asking, "How do I enjoy my weekends more?" And you start asking, "Why does my life require escape in the first place?" That question changes everything, because it redirects your focus from symptoms to cause, from distraction to design, from temporary relief to long-term alignment. And once you start seeing it clearly, you won't be able to unsee it. The weekend is not the problem. It never was. The problem is the role you've assigned to it. You've turned it into a refuge instead of a reflection. Instead of using those 2 days to build, refine, and align your life, you've been using them to forget about it. That's the quiet destruction of ambition. Not dramatic, not obvious, but consistent. And consistency is what shapes identity. So ask yourself directly, not casually, not defensively, honestly, are you building a life you respect? Or just managing one you tolerate? There's no neutral answer. And once you answer that, the next part becomes unavoidable. Because what's coming next is the mechanism behind this entire cycle. The part most people never examine. The reason you keep repeating this pattern even when you know it's costing you. The dopamine trap. And if you don't understand it, you will keep calling escape, rest, while your future self pays the price. Before we go deeper, lock this in. If this is hitting you, don't just watch passively. Like the video so this message reaches more people stuck in the same loop. Comment this phrase, "I don't escape my life." Not for me, for you. Because identity is reinforced through what you declare publicly. And if you're serious about changing this pattern, you don't stay silent about it. Share this with someone who is living for the weekend without realizing what it's costing them. And if you're not subscribed, fix that. Because what comes next will dismantle the part of your behavior you've been unconsciously protecting. And once you see it, you won't go back to the same version of yourself. Now pay attention, because the real trap hasn't even been exposed yet. You think you're choosing the weekend. You're not. Your brain is choosing it for you. And it's not choosing freedom. It's choosing relief. There's a difference, and that difference is quietly shaping your entire life. Because what you call relaxing is not neutral. It's chemical, calculated, designed. And once you understand that, the pattern stops looking harmless. It starts looking engineered. Here's what's actually happening. All week, your mind is under tension. Not just from work, but from misalignment. From doing things that don't fully connect to who you are or where you want to go. That creates a low, constant friction inside you. You don't always notice it. But your brain does. And it responds the only way it knows how. It starts craving release. Not progress. Not growth. Release. So by the time Friday arrives, your system isn't asking, "What will move my life forward?" It's asking, "What will make me feel better right now?" That question is the beginning of the trap. Because the moment you prioritize feeling better over becoming better, your trajectory shifts. Subtly, but consistently. And consistency is what defines outcomes. So you reach for what's easy. Fast dopamine, instant stimulation, no resistance, no effort, no thinking. You don't say it out loud, but your behavior reveals it. Scrolling for hours without direction. Watching content you don't even remember the next day. Eating, drinking, consuming, anything that quiets the internal noise without addressing its source. And it works. That's the problem. It works immediately. You feel lighter, distracted, disconnected from the pressure of the week. But what you're actually doing is numbing the signal that was trying to guide you. That discomfort you felt during the week, it wasn't random. It was information, a message. Something in your life needs to change. But instead of decoding it, you sedated it. And now the signal is gone. Not solved, just suppressed. This is the dopamine trap of 48-hour escapism. You don't experience your life. You oscillate between tension and anesthesia. Weekday tension, weekend anesthesia. Repeat. There is no integration in that cycle. No reflection, no recalibration. Just alternating states that keep you functional enough to continue, but never conscious enough to change. And here's the deeper problem. The more you rely on that weekend dopamine spike, the less satisfying normal life begins to feel. Because your brain adapts. It recalibrates its baseline. What used to feel enjoyable becomes neutral. What used to feel neutral becomes boring. And what used to feel boring becomes unbearable. So now, the same life that you tolerated before feels heavier. More draining, more suffocating, and your need for escape increases. That's how dependency forms, not on substances alone, but on patterns. You become dependent on the weekend. Not because it's inherently valuable, but because your weekday life has become increasingly disconnected from fulfillment. And instead of correcting that misalignment, you double down on the escape. Longer nights, more consumption, more distraction, more noise, until eventually, silence itself feels uncomfortable. Stillness becomes something you avoid. Because in stillness, there are no distractions. No filters. No stimulation to hide behind. Just you. And most people are not prepared to sit with that. So they stay busy. Not productive. Busy. There's a difference. Productivity moves you forward. Busyness keeps you occupied. And the weekend has become the perfect environment for sophisticated busyness. You tell yourself you're unwinding. But what you're really doing is overstimulating your brain to avoid introspection. And introspection is where change begins. So by avoiding it, you maintain the same life. Week after week, month after month, year after year. This is why time feels like it's accelerating for you. Because you're not engaging with it deeply. You're skimming across the surface of your own life. Distracted during the week, sedated on the weekend. And when you look back, nothing stands out. Nothing feels substantial. Just a blur of repetition. And that blur becomes your life. Not because you chose it consciously, but because you never interrupted the pattern. You never paused long enough to question what you were reinforcing. Let's get more precise. Dopamine is not the enemy. It's a tool, but in your current pattern, it's being used against you. Because you're consuming high-intensity rewards without earning them. And that breaks your internal reward system. Your brain starts expecting pleasure without effort, stimulation without discipline, relief without change. So when it's time to do something difficult, something that actually moves your life forward, it feels disproportionately hard. Not because it is, but because your baseline has been distorted. You've trained your mind to chase ease. So effort feels like friction. And friction feels like something to avoid. This is how ambition gets quietly dismantled. Not through lack of desire, but through miscalibrated reward. You still want more. You still think about becoming better. You still imagine a different life. But your daily behavior is reinforcing the opposite. Comfort over challenge. Distraction over direction. Relief over responsibility. And over time, that creates internal conflict. Because your identity and your actions are no longer aligned. You say you want growth. But you practice escape. You say you value discipline. But you reward avoidance. That contradiction doesn't stay hidden. It shows up as frustration. As guilt. As that subtle feeling that you're capable of more but not doing anything about it. And instead of resolving that tension, you escape it again the next weekend. This is the loop. And it's more dangerous than failure. Because failure at least confronts you. This keeps you comfortable enough to continue. Just enough relief to prevent change. Just enough distraction to avoid truth. And the longer you stay in this loop, the harder it becomes to break. Not because you're weak, but because your system has been trained to resist discomfort at all costs. Which brings us to something most people misunderstand. Rest is necessary, but what you're doing is not rest. Rest prepares you to re-engage with life more effectively. What you're doing prepares you to tolerate it again. That's not the same. One builds capacity, the other maintains survival. So when you say, "I just need the weekend to recharge," examine that closely. Are you actually recharging, or are you numbing yourself enough to go back into a life that drains you? Because if it's the second one, then the weekend is not helping you. It's sustaining the problem, and that's where most people stay stuck. They try to optimize their escape instead of eliminating the need for it. Better entertainment, better distractions, more fun, but no real change, so nothing improves, and the cycle tightens. Here's the shift you need to make. Stop asking how to make your weekends feel better. Start asking why your weekdays feel like something to escape from. Because the answer to that question is where your leverage is. Not in what you do for 48 hours, but in what you tolerate for the other 120. That's where your life is actually being shaped. That's where your direction is decided. And if that part is misaligned, no amount of weekend relief will fix it. It will only delay the consequences. This is where most people look away. Because confronting that reality means admitting something difficult. That the life you're currently maintaining might not be the life you actually want. And that realization creates pressure. Real pressure. The kind that demands change. So instead, you return to the pattern. Because it's familiar, predictable, comfortable. But comfort, in this context, is not safety. It's stagnation. And stagnation doesn't announce itself loudly. It feels like routine, like normal, like, this is just how things are. Until years pass and you realize nothing significant has changed. That's the cost of unexamined dopamine. Not destruction. Drift. Slow, quiet drift away from your potential. And by the time most people notice it, they've built an entire life around avoiding the discomfort required to correct it. So they stay, not because they want to, but because they no longer trust themselves to change. That's where this pattern leads if you don't interrupt it. But there's a signal, a consistent one, something that shows up every single week, whether you pay attention to it or not. A moment where the truth becomes harder to ignore. Most people feel it, very few understand it, and almost no one uses it correctly. It's not random, it's not weakness, it's feedback. And in the next part, you're going to see exactly what it is and why your body keeps sending it to you. Before that, lock this in. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, don't stay passive. Like the video so this reaches others trapped in the same loop. Comment this. I control my dopamine. Not as motivation, as a declaration. Because what you repeat publicly, you start reinforcing internally. Share this with someone who confuses escape with rest. And subscribe, because the next shift is where most people either wake up or double down on the same life. Now pay attention. Because what you feel every Sunday is not random. It's a warning, and you've been ignoring it for too long. That feeling you get on Sunday isn't laziness. It's not weakness, and it's definitely not something you should ignore. It's a signal, a precise one. Your body doesn't send signals without reason. But you've been trained to misinterpret this one. You call it Sunday blues, Sunday anxiety, just not ready for the week. But those are soft labels. Comfortable explanations that keep you from asking the real question. Why does your life create a reaction like this every single week? Think about that carefully, not occasionally, not during crisis, every week. Same pattern, same emotional drop, same internal resistance. That's not random, that's consistency. And consistency means there's a system behind it. You feel it start subtly. Sunday afternoon, time slows down in a strange way. You're still trying to enjoy yourself, but there's a background noise now. A thought you keep pushing away. Tomorrow is coming. Responsibilities return. Structure returns. And with it, the version of your life that doesn't fully sit right with you. So you try to stretch the moment. Scroll longer. Watch something else. Stay distracted. Delay the confrontation. But it keeps creeping in. Because your mind knows something your behavior is trying to avoid. You are about to return to something you don't respect. That's what the anxiety is. It's not about Monday. It's about misalignment. If your life was aligned with your values, your direction, your sense of purpose, Monday wouldn't feel like a threat. It might still require effort. It might still demand discipline. But it wouldn't create resistance at the level you're experiencing now. Your body doesn't resist meaningful challenge. It resists prolonged contradiction. And that's what your current pattern is built on. You are living in contradiction. You say you want growth, but you spend most of your time maintaining. You say you want control, but your schedule controls you. You say you value your future, but your behavior prioritizes immediate relief. That tension doesn't disappear, it accumulates. And by Sunday, it surfaces. Not as clarity, as anxiety. Because anxiety is what happens when truth is felt but not processed. You don't sit with it long enough to understand it. You try to escape it. So what do? You prepare for Monday the wrong way. You don't realign your life. You numb the discomfort. You distract yourself harder. Maybe you tell yourself you'll start fresh tomorrow. Maybe you plan things you don't follow through on. Maybe you just accept it and say, that's life. But every one of those responses has the same outcome. Nothing changes. So Monday arrives exactly the same way it always does. Heavy, resistant, predictable, and you step back into the same loop. That's the real danger of the Sunday signal. Not that it exists, but that you keep ignoring what it's telling you. Your body is rejecting a life built on constant recovery. Read that again. It's not rejecting work. It's not rejecting discipline. It's rejecting the structure of a life that drains you more than it fulfills you. That's a critical distinction, because most people respond by trying to become tougher. They tell themselves to push through, to stop complaining, to be more disciplined. But discipline applied to a misaligned life doesn't fix the problem. It deepens it. You become better at enduring something that isn't right for you, more efficient at suppressing your own signals. And over time, that creates something worse than anxiety. Numbness. You stop reacting, not because things improved, but because you adapted to the discomfort. You lowered your expectations. You accepted the loop. And once that happens, change becomes even harder. Because now there's no urgency. No sharp signal forcing you to pay attention. Just a quiet, dull dissatisfaction. That's where many people stay for years. Functional, stable, unfulfilled, and they call it normal. But you can't afford to normalize something that is slowly disconnecting you from your own potential. That Sunday feeling is one of the few moments where your system breaks through the noise. Where it forces you to notice. And instead of using it, you've been avoiding it. That's the inversion. The exact moment that could trigger change becomes another moment of escape. So the loop continues. Let's go deeper. This isn't just psychological, it's physiological. Your nervous system is involved. All week, you operate under controlled stress. Deadlines, expectations, responsibilities. Your body adapts, it manages, but it doesn't fully recover. Then the weekend comes, and instead of giving your system structured recovery, you flood it with stimulation. Late nights, irregular sleep, overconsumption, constant input. Your system never stabilizes. It just shifts states, from controlled stress to chaotic stimulation. And then Sunday arrives, and your body knows what's coming next. A return to structured stress without real recovery. So it reacts. That reaction is anxiety, not because something is wrong with you, but because your system is anticipating another cycle it hasn't resolved. This is why you feel tired even after resting. Why your mind feels foggy. Why your motivation drops. Because your recovery isn't real. It's fragmented. And fragmentation creates fatigue. So now, you're entering Monday already depleted. Already resistant. Already behind. And that reinforces the narrative. Work is draining. Life is exhausting. I just need the weekend. But the truth is more precise. Your current structure is unsustainable. And your body is telling you that every single week. The question is whether you're willing to listen. Because listening requires something uncomfortable. It requires you to admit that the life you've built, or the one you're maintaining, might not be aligned with who you're becoming. And that admission creates pressure. Real pressure. The kind that demands change, not distraction. This is where most people hesitate. Because change introduces uncertainty. And uncertainty feels dangerous. So they choose familiarity instead. Even if that familiarity is draining. Even if it keeps producing the same anxiety every Sunday. Because at least it's predictable. But predictable suffering is still suffering. And over time, it compounds. Not just in your emotions, In your identity, you start to see yourself as someone who is just getting by. Someone who survives the week. Someone who looks forward to escape. That identity becomes self-reinforcing. Because your behavior aligns with it. And your results reflect it. So the cycle tightens. But here's the part you need to understand clearly. That Sunday feeling is not your enemy. It's one of the most honest signals you have. It's telling you something your distractions are trying to hide. That your current life structure is out of alignment with your deeper direction. And until you address that, no amount of weekend relief will remove the anxiety. It will just delay it. You can't out-distract misalignment. You can only confront it. And confrontation requires stillness, the exact thing you've been avoiding. Because in stillness, you can't hide behind stimulation. You can't scroll past the discomfort. You have to face it. You have to ask real questions. What am I building? Why does my life feel like something I need to escape from? What am I tolerating that I shouldn't be? Those questions don't give instant relief. They create friction. But that friction is necessary. Because it leads to clarity. And clarity leads to change. Without it, you stay in the loop. Managing symptoms instead of addressing cause. Week after week, signal after signal, ignored, until it either forces a breakdown, or fades into numbness. Neither outcome serves you, so the next time Sunday arrives, don't rush to escape it. Observe it. Pay attention to what you're feeling without immediately trying to change it. Because inside that discomfort is information you've been missing. And once you start reading it correctly, the pattern begins to break. But there's another layer to this. Something even more subtle. Because the weekend doesn't just hide misalignment. It actively suppresses the conditions required to fix it. And that's where most people lose control without realizing it. Before we go there, make this concrete. If you've felt that Sunday signal, don't dismiss it again. Like the video so this reaches others who keep ignoring the same pattern. Comment this. I listen to the signal. Not as a trend, as a commitment. Because ignoring it is what keeps you stuck. Share this with someone who always says, I hate Sundays, but never asks why. And subscribe, because the next part exposes what's quietly preventing you from ever breaking out of this cycle. Now stay focused, because what's suppressing your growth isn't just what you do during the week. It's what you keep doing to avoid thinking about it. And that's where the real control is being lost. You think the weekend is where you recover. It's actually where you lose control. Not visibly, not dramatically, quietly. Because what you do between Friday and Sunday doesn't just relax you. It conditions you, and most of that conditioning is working against the version of yourself you claim to be building. Look at it without distortion. The moment Friday arrives, something in you switches. You don't transition. You release. There's no intentional shift, no controlled reset, just a drop. Standards lower, focus disappears, structure dissolves, and in that gap, something else takes over. Impulse. You don't plan your weekend. You react through it. Whatever feels good in the moment becomes the priority. And that feels like freedom. But it isn't. It's reactivity disguised as choice. Because real control requires awareness. And awareness requires stillness. Two things you avoid the moment the weekend begins. Instead, you flood your system. More content, more noise, more stimulation, back-to-back inputs with no space in between. And your brain adapts to that environment. It starts expecting constant engagement, constant reward, constant novelty, which means something critical begins to degrade. Your ability to sit with difficulty. Your ability to think deeply. Your ability to stay focused without external stimulation. That's the cost. And it doesn't show up immediately. It shows up when you try to do something that actually matters. Something slow. Something uncomfortable. Something that requires sustained attention. You sit down to focus, and your mind resists. Not subtly, aggressively. You feel the urge to check your phone. To switch tasks. To escape the discomfort. And you tell yourself it's lack of discipline. It's not. It's conditioning. You trained your brain to avoid stillness. To reject low stimulation environments. To chase the fastest reward available. And now, when real work demands patience, your system pushes back. Because it no longer recognizes effort as rewarding. Only stimulation. That's how short-term dopamine suppresses long-term growth. Not by removing your ambition. but by making the process required to achieve it feel unbearable. You still want more, but you can't sit long enough to build it. You still think about change, but you don't tolerate the discomfort required to execute it. So you stay in motion without direction. Busy, but not advancing. Active, but not evolving. This is where most people misunderstand the role of discomfort. They see it as something to eliminate, something to reduce, something to avoid. But discomfort is not the problem. It's the signal, the indicator that you're at the edge of your current capacity. And that edge is where growth happens. When you remove discomfort completely, you remove the conditions required for change. You stay within what's easy, what's familiar, what's already known, and nothing new emerges from that space. That's exactly what your weekend pattern enforces. It removes all friction, all resistance, all moments where you might be forced to confront something deeper. So you never reach the point where transformation becomes necessary. You just reset the same version of yourself every week. Slightly more tired, slightly more distracted, but essentially unchanged. Now compare that to a different pattern. Someone who doesn't run from discomfort, who doesn't flood their mind the moment silence appears, who allows themselves to sit in that tension, to think, to question, to reflect. At first, it feels heavier, less entertaining, less stimulating, but something else begins to develop. Clarity. Because when there's no noise, you start hearing things you've been avoiding. You start seeing patterns in your own behavior. You start recognizing what isn't working. And that recognition creates leverage. Real leverage. The kind that allows you to make changes at the root, not just at the surface. That's the difference between distracted individuals and those who evolve. One group fills every gap with stimulation. The other uses those gaps to recalibrate. One avoids discomfort. The other studies it. One escapes. The other confronts. And over time, those small differences compound into completely different lives. Not because of talent, not because of luck, but because of what they do when nothing is forcing them to act. That's where your identity is actually built. Not under pressure, not when deadlines exist, but in unstructured time. And right now, your unstructured time is being consumed by the very things that prevent you from changing your structured time. That's the loop. You escape your weekdays on the weekend. And your weekends make your weekdays harder to fix. So the cycle reinforces itself. Every single week, without interruption, until it feels permanent. But it's not permanent. It's just unchallenged. And the moment you challenge it, everything starts to shift. Not immediately, but predictably. Because once you remove constant stimulation, something uncomfortable happens. Your thoughts become louder. Your awareness increases. You start noticing how you're spending your time. What you're avoiding, what you're tolerating, and that awareness creates pressure. The kind you can't ignore. The kind that pushes you toward change. That's why most people don't stay in that state for long. They return to distraction. Because it's easier. Because it numbs the pressure. Because it allows them to continue the same life without confronting it. But if you stay there, if you sit in that discomfort without escaping it, something else happens. You start thinking differently. Not surface-level thoughts, deeper ones. You start questioning your direction, your habits, your environment. And from that questioning, decisions begin to form. Clear ones, not based on impulse, based on understanding. That's where real change starts. Not in motivation, not in temporary discipline, in clarity. And clarity only comes when you remove what's constantly distracting you from seeing the truth. So ask yourself directly, what are you doing every weekend that prevents you from thinking about your life? Not what you enjoy, what you use to avoid. Be honest, because that answer reveals exactly where your control is being lost. And once you see it, you have a choice. Continue the pattern, or interrupt it. There's no middle ground, because every repetition strengthens it. Every interruption weakens it. That's how habits are broken. Not through intention, through disruption, consistent disruption. And it starts with something simple. You don't eliminate your weekend. You redefine it, from escape, to alignment, from stimulation, to awareness, from avoidance, to confrontation. That shift changes everything, because now, your unstructured time becomes an asset, not a liability, a space where you can think, adjust, and build, instead of just recover. But that requires discipline, not the loud kind, Not the visible kind, the internal kind. The ability to sit still when your mind wants stimulation. The ability to focus when your system craves distraction. The ability to stay present when escape feels easier. That's control, and without it, nothing else holds. Before moving forward, make this concrete. If you're ready to stop letting your weekends control your direction, engage with this. Like the video so this reaches others stuck in the same cycle. Comment this: I sit in discomfort. Because that's where your leverage is. Share this with someone who fills every moment with noise but still feels stuck. And subscribe, because the final shift is where everything connects. Where you stop reacting to your life and start designing it. Now stay with this, because understanding the problem is not enough. You need to see what comes after. And that's where most people hesitate. Not because they can't change, but because change requires them to become someone different. And that's exactly what we're about to confront. At some point, you have to stop analyzing the cycle and decide whether you're going to keep living inside it. Because understanding the pattern does not break it. Decision does. And not a vague one. Not, I'll try to do better next week. A clear shift in identity. Because everything you've seen up to this point points to one conclusion. You don't have a weekend problem. You have a life design problem. And until you correct that, nothing changes. Not permanently. You might adjust small behaviors. You might reduce some distractions. But the underlying loop remains. Weekday misalignment. Weekend escape. Repeated. So the question becomes direct. Are you willing to build a life that doesn't require escape? Not a perfect life. Not an easy one. A coherent one. A life where your daily actions are connected to something you actually respect. Because that's what removes the need for constant relief. Alignment. When what you do consistently reflects who you are becoming, something shifts. Work stops feeling like something you endure. It becomes something you engage with. Effort stops feeling like punishment. It becomes investment. And time stops feeling like something you survive. It becomes something you use. But that shift requires precision. You can't approach it casually. You don't fix this by simply being more disciplined. You fix it by redesigning how you use your time and attention. That's where control lives. Not in motivation. Not in bursts of energy. In structure. Intentional structure. Right now, your time is divided unconsciously. Work takes the majority. Recovery fills the rest. There is no space for deliberate construction of your future. Only maintenance of your present. That has to change. And it starts with something most people avoid. Ownership. Complete ownership. No external blame. No soft explanations. You stop saying, "This is just how life is." And you start asking, "What part of this am I choosing to tolerate?" Because tolerance is a decision. Even when it feels forced. Even when it feels limited. There are always variables you can adjust. Time allocation. Energy direction. Environment. Inputs. And most importantly, attention. Where your attention goes, your life follows. Right now, your attention is fragmented. Pulled in multiple directions. Consumed by things that give you nothing in return except temporary relief. That's what you need to reclaim. Not time alone. Attention. Because you can have time and still waste it if your attention is uncontrolled. So the shift becomes practical. You don't wait for the weekend to feel alive. You start building a life where each day contains something that moves you forward. Not everything. Something. Consistently. Even in small amounts. Because consistency compounds. That's what you've been missing. Not intensity. Continuity. Right now, your progress is broken into fragments. Start. Stop. Escape. Repeat. There is no sustained direction. So nothing accumulates. Nothing builds. You stay in the same place, just with different experiences. To break that, you need to anchor your days. Not with random tasks. With intentional actions that align with your long-term direction. Every day. No exceptions. Even if it's minimal. Because minimal consistency is more powerful than occasional intensity. And over time, that consistency reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries to improve. You become someone who builds. Quietly, deliberately, without needing external validation, without needing escape. That's the identity shift. From consumer to creator, from reactor to designer, from someone who waits for the weekend to someone who uses every day with intent. That doesn't mean you eliminate rest. It means you redefine it. Rest is no longer an escape. It becomes strategic, purposeful, aligned. You rest to recover for something meaningful, not to forget something draining. That distinction changes how you approach your time. Even your weekends. They stop being a release valve. They become an extension of your direction. A place where you can think deeper. Adjust your path. Invest in what matters, without the pressure of structured obligations. That's real freedom, not the ability to disconnect for 48 hours. The ability to stay connected to your life without needing to escape it. And once you experience that, the old pattern loses its appeal. Because you realize something clearly. Relief is not the same as freedom. Relief is temporary. Freedom is structural. Relief depends on escape. Freedom depends on alignment. And alignment requires discipline. Not the loud, performative kind. The quiet kind. The kind that shows up daily. The kind that doesn't negotiate with distraction. The kind that chooses long-term direction over short-term comfort. That's what builds a life you respect. Not motivation. Not inspiration. Consistency in alignment. Now, understand this. Breaking this cycle will feel uncomfortable at first. Because you're removing something your system has relied on. The escape. The dopamine. The distraction. There will be moments where your mind looks for the old pattern. Where it tries to convince you to go back. Just this weekend. It's not a big deal. You deserve it. And you have to recognize that voice for what it is. Conditioning, not truth. Because every time you return to that pattern, you reinforce it. And every time you resist it, you weaken it. That's the process. There is no shortcut, but there is certainty. If you stay consistent, the pattern breaks. And when it breaks, something replaces it. Clarity, control, direction. You start waking up without needing to escape your day. You start moving through your week without counting down to the weekend. You start using your time instead of waiting for it to pass. That's the shift, not dramatic, but definitive. And once it happens, you don't go back. Because you've experienced something better. A life that feels like yours. Not something you're temporarily tolerating. So the final question is simple. Not easy, but simple. Are you going to keep escaping your life? Or are you going to start building one? There's no middle ground. Because every week you repeat the old pattern, you move further away from the life you claim to want. And every time you interrupt it, you move closer. That's the trade, always. Now make this real. If you're done living for the weekend, engage with this. Like the video so this message reaches people who are still stuck in that loop. Comment this. I don't escape my life. Not for visibility, for identity. Because what you declare, you reinforce. Share this with someone who needs to hear it but won't search for it. And subscribe, because this is not where it ends. This is where it starts. Now listen carefully. Don't just close this and move on. Don't let this become another piece of content you consume and forget. Carry this into your next decision, your next weekend, your next moment of discomfort, and act differently. That's how the pattern breaks. And if you're serious about building control, continue to the next lesson. Don't break the chain. Stay in this sequence until your behavior matches what you now understand. Because knowledge without action is just another form of escape. And you're done with that.